In this talk, I'm going to present 3 practical reasons to pursue a PhD. So first, I'm going to briefly describe what a PhD is at a high level, then 3 reasons to pursue a PhD, followed by 3 reasons not to pursue a PhD. To set the scene, I want to give a little bit of my academic background. So I went to MIT for college, majoring in electrical engineering and computer science from 2001 to 2006, where I got both my bachelor's and my master's degrees. So during that time, I worked in a variety of research projects in academia, but I also spent my summers doing engineering internships. So after my freshman year, I interned at a small Linux application development company called CodeHost. And then after my sophomore and junior years, I interned at a much bigger and more established company called Teradyne that made semiconductor test hardware. I was on path to doing a co-op program at MIT that allowed you to intern for several summers and then do your master's thesis at a company, which was a good lead-in for a job in engineering after graduation. But after my second summer at Teradyne, I decided that I didn't really want to do engineering after graduating. I wanted to get more into academic research. So I decided to make a leap back into academia and quit Teradyne and do my master's thesis back at MIT in an academic lab. And immediately after my undergrad and master's degrees, I went to Stanford to do my PhD in computer science. Again, I participated in various research projects in academia, but I also spent my summers in industry on more engineering-related projects. So after my first summer, I was at Google as a software engineering intern. After my third year of grad school, I interned at Microsoft Research. And after my fifth year, I interned again at Google. I then spent a semester at Harvard as a visiting researcher. And it was at this time toward my PhD that I felt like I was getting a bit tired of academia. I didn't really think that I wanted to keep doing academic research longer term. So then I decided to move back into industry, and I got a full-time job at Google as a software engineer. So I'm at Google for about half a year, and again, I decided to flip-flop and think, maybe this academia thing is actually pretty cool. Maybe I'm going to give it another shot. So I applied for and obtained a tenure-track faculty position at the University of Rochester. And that's where I'll be going starting in fall 2014. I'll be starting as an assistant professor of computer science. So I deferred my offer for 1 year, and I'm spending the current year, 2013 to 2014, back in Boston at 2 places. First at edX, which is an education nonprofit, and then also at MIT as a postdoc. And the purpose of this year is to build up my research portfolio before starting as a professor at Rochester. So the high-level point of the slide is to show that I've had a variety of experiences in both academia and industry, so I've seen the pros and cons of both sides. So the main disclaimer of this talk is that it's most relevant to STEM majors. So if you're a, say, history or humanities major, this talk may not be as relevant to you. So let's get right down to it. What is a PhD? At a high level, a PhD means producing new knowledge. So when you're an undergrad, your job was to absorb existing knowledge and to master it so that you could apply it in the world. To do a PhD, you need to be able to produce new knowledge in a given subfield of research. Conceptually, here's how it works. So there's you in a box in the middle. You take as inputs existing work in the form of research papers. You read these papers, you kind of understand what the state of the art is in some field. You also take as input packages of files representing, say, source code or data sets that you need to analyze. And you use existing code and data to build your prototypes and your analysis and your experiments. And the third input you get is discussions with your colleagues, with your advisor, with other professors, with other grad students to make sense of the existing work that's out there and figure out how you can make a contribution that's novel and that improves upon the state of the art. So with all these inputs combined, a lot of hard work, you end up producing as output a peer-reviewed research paper. So this is the main output of your PhD work and of academic research in general, is a paper that's been peer-reviewed by people in your field. So if you do this several times, you produce, say, 3 papers, you can wrap them together into what's called a PhD dissertation, and then you get your degree. On average, it takes about 5 to 7 years of your time, and you're getting paid a salary of around $15K to $25K a year. So the thing to notice about doing a PhD is you're actually getting paid a salary. It's a job that you're doing to produce research. Why pursue a PhD? Everybody has very personal reasons, and there's a wide gamut of responses to this question. But the title of this talk is 3 Practical Reasons. And I feel like that the 3 practical reasons to pursue a PhD all boil down to one overall theme, which is to trade money for freedom. So I'm going to illustrate what I mean by that. So here's a graph. On the y-axis, it shows the annual salary of a job. And on the x-axis, it shows some degree of freedom that you have. So as a new STEM grad, as a new graduate in, say, an engineering or a math field, you have to get a job. You have to do something, right? I mean, you could be independently wealthy and not have to work, but for most of us, we have to actually get some job. And as a new graduate, the jobs you're going to get are going to have to trade off money and freedom. So on one extreme, I have friends who got jobs right out of college in the financial industry, and they're paid quite a lot of money, but they actually have very little freedom. Their jobs are very structured and very regulated, and because they're paid so much and the stakes are so high, they don't have that much freedom to venture off. In the middle is a variety of engineering jobs where you're getting paid a pretty good salary, but you have a bit more creative freedom than, say, if you're in the financial sector. And on the other extreme is going to grad school to get a PhD. You're getting paid very little money, 15 to 25K a year, but you have a tremendous amount of freedom. And by grad school, I mean a PhD program. So not like going to medical school or law school or business school, because in all those programs, you're actually paying a tuition. You're not getting paid a salary. So what kind of freedoms do you have as a grad student doing your PhD? You obviously don't have the freedom to do whatever you want because you're still getting paid a bit of a salary and you're expected to be producing new knowledge in terms of research. In grad school, you have 3 main sets of freedoms. First one is to make a name for yourself. You also have the freedom to fail in a safe environment. And finally, you have the freedom to choose from more jobs later on after you graduate. First is make a name for yourself. When you're doing your PhD, at age 22, you are paid to initiate, collaborate on, and promote your own projects. I've worked in industry in various companies and I've talked to friends in a lot of different organizations, and in no other job can you, as a new employee at age 22, initiate, collaborate on, and promote your own projects. So what do I mean by that? That means that you actually get to do everything end to end from start to finish, from formulating your ideas and fleshing them out, to spending a lot of time executing on your ideas, building prototypes, running experiments, doing studies, to selling your ideas in the form of writing research papers, giving presentations, persuading others why your idea actually works. So in an industrial organization, such as a company or in the government, all these 3 stages are done by different sets of people. So the idea formulation comes from above, from suits, from the C-level executives, from middle managers, from other sorts of people who set the high-level direction. The executing stage happens on engineering teams. So there'll be a lot of senior engineers on your team, plus you, since you're the junior engineer on the team. And you're all working together to execute and to create this product. And then you hand it off to the salespeople, to the project managers who try to sell this project within the organization, to sales teams, to marketing teams, to PR teams. Whereas in grad school, you get a chance to practice and do all of this on your own with help and mentorship from others, of course. But you get to really develop a variety of skill sets that you would not be able to do as much if you're in industry. And the product of this is usually research papers, but one of the most satisfying things I had in grad school was getting open source software released and getting noticed on websites such as Slashdot. So this is in the middle of grad school. One of my projects appeared on Slashdot. It was a project that had to do with packaging Linux software. And due to this attention, my software got tens of thousands of downloads, and I got a lot of publicity for it, and I managed to write papers off it and do studies off it and everything. This was a really fun experience. That was my project from end to end, from the formulation to the execution to the selling stage. That was really satisfying. Another thing that's really fun about being in grad school is collaborations. So toward the end of grad school, I told my advisor, hey, I met this Harvard professor at a conference and pitched a collaboration idea to her. Can I spend a semester there? And he was like, sure, go ahead. And I spent a semester at Harvard working on a research project with a professor there that ended up being the final portion of my dissertation. It was a really fun semester working with her there. And we ended up publishing a paper off it. So I was at Stanford then, and she was at Harvard, and we co-authored a paper together. And it was just really fun. Now imagine me in a company trying to do this, right? So let's say I'm at Google and I tell my boss, hey, I met this Facebook engineer at a conference and want to hook our code together. Can I hack there next week? Of course, nobody would ever allow that to happen. Right? That's unheard of in industry, to be working together with engineers at a rival company. The only ways that companies collaborate is if their leadership decides, oh, maybe it's actually beneficial for our companies to sign a deal with one another to collaborate. But you, as the new employee, do not have the clout to strike up these collaborations. And on a related note, this culture of confidentiality and secrecy is a default in many areas of industry. So this is part of a employment contract that you have to sign whenever you join most organizations. And it says to protect the interests of both the company and its clients, all employees are required to read and sign the enclosed at will employment, confidential information, invention assignment, and a bunch of other forms. So at will employment means that they can let you go at any time. It's pretty standard. Confidential information means that anything you see in this organization is by default confidential. You can't talk to anybody about it outside of the organization unless we give you special permission to. So secrecy is the default. And last one is invention assignment, which means that anything you do while working at this organization, whether it's during work hours or even on your own time, belong to this company, and they don't really belong to you. This is sort of the default in industry, that it makes it really hard for you to initiate and promote your own projects, because whatever you're doing is property of the company. And the thing I bolded of both XXX and its clients really shows a culture that it's really to protect the interests of the organization you're working for and their clients. I mean, it doesn't really mention your interests at all there. So why care about this? Why care about making a name for yourself? I think everyone should care because in the coming decades, as jobs get more competitive, your public portfolio makes you stand out and opens up interesting career opportunities. So as more and more people get into engineering and science type fields, what will make you stand out is what you can show publicly about your work. And if you built up a career working on things that you can't really easily show publicly, it just makes it a lot harder for you to go to new places or find new opportunities. But whereas if you're actually able to show your work and demonstrate it publicly and share it with others, it just gives you a lot more leverage in terms of finding opportunities in your career. And a PhD is one way to build up a public portfolio of work. The second benefit of a PhD is that you have the freedom to fail in a safe environment. So at age 22, you're paid to fail repeatedly without hurting your career. Again, I've talked to friends in all sorts of industries, and in no other industry can you fail several times without taking a hit on your reputation in your career. So here are some ways that every PhD student fails. So if you're a PhD student, you'll fail in all these ways and more. Your ideas will get bashed. Your prototypes will break. Your experiments will flop. Your collaborators will flake out on you. Your papers will get rejected often multiple times. And your talks will get trashed. So at every part of this creative process, from formulating the ideas to executing on them to selling and presenting your ideas, you're going to face criticism left and right, and things are just not going to work, because the nature of research is that things are uncertain and people are very critical of new work. So why subject yourself to all of this pain over 5 years while getting paid so little money? And this report issued by the US Department of Education really sums up a lot of the benefits of this sort of trial by fire. So it's pretty widely acknowledged now that these traits of grit, tenacity, and perseverance are just so important in anything you end up doing professionally in your life, that being able to have a safe environment where you can practice those skills is just really valuable. So I'm going to go back to my graph here of freedom versus money. So if you're in a high-paid, high-stakes industry like finance, if you fail, you get fired. I have friends who've gotten fired several times from different financial firms because they failed to meet a performance quota, or they failed to do something that their bosses wanted. Because they're paying you a lot of money, they really are not going to cut you a ton of slack. In the middle is engineering firms. So at good engineering companies, if you fail in your project, it doesn't work that well, you're not going to get fired, especially if you're a new employee. They'll cut you some slack. But the problem is that even if you're not going to get fired, your career quickly gets stifled. So when you're in engineering, you're going to get quarterly performance reviews of how you're doing on your project and how you're progressing. And if you're trying something too wild or experimental and things aren't working out, and for some reason or another, you're just not really kind of cutting it, you're going to suffer on your reviews, and your colleagues who are working on more well-set projects that are more safe are going to get rewarded more for it. And eventually what happens is that they're going to get promoted faster than you are. And if you keep on failing in these projects, your career will get stifled. You're just not going to be able to pick interesting projects. People aren't going to respect you as much in the organization, and your career just gets prematurely plateaued. So lastly, in grad school, when you're doing your PhD, you're getting paid so little money, you're really under the radar for a lot of stuff. So failure is really seen as an opportunity to grow. And professors know that students are researchers in training, so they'll facilitate your growth in there. And everybody fails. Professors fail, senior researchers fail. Failure is just sort of inherent in the process of doing research. So it really provides a safe environment for you to grow from such failures. So why care? Because grit, tenacity, and perseverance lead to long-term professional success and happiness. And this is very well documented that if you're going to be in an environment where everyone is pretty smart and pretty motivated, the thing that will set you apart in terms of finding success and happiness in your work are these traits of grit, tenacity, and perseverance, how you can bounce back from inevitable failures rather than getting paralyzed by them. And grad school is a great period to develop these very important traits that will last you throughout your career. I mean, it's 5 or 7 years, but if your career is going to last 30 or 40, or now people are living longer, maybe even 50 years, I think just having that in your toolbox is just really valuable. Lastly, the last practical reason for doing a PhD is that after your PhD, more jobs will be open to you than when you graduated from college. So here's a chart of some jobs that are available to bachelor's and master's graduates in a STEM field. So you can do engineering, you can do project management, you can work in financial sector, you can be an entrepreneur and start your own company, or you can be a teacher at the K-12 level. After your PhD, a wide array of new jobs open to you. So you can be an engineer doing more R&D type work. You can be a researcher in a corporation or in the government. You can work for a company doing management consulting. You can be a quantitative analyst in finance rather than a lower level analyst. You can be in the university as a research scientist or as a tenure track assistant professor. Or if you want to focus more on teaching, you can now teach at the college level because you have a PhD in addition to teaching at the K-12 level. And of course, these jobs aren't, this is not the only sort of jobs you can get with your PhD. If you're keeping up to date with technology and such, all the existing jobs you could have gotten out of your bachelor's and master's, you can still get now with your PhD. Of course, the main caveat is you're going to be 5 to 7 years older and you're not going to have as much money as your peers. But assuming that your career lasts 30, 40, or even 50 years, because people are living longer nowadays, just having more options open is a great thing. So again, why care? Because as offshoring, automation, and new technologies destroy old jobs, you need as many new options as possible. So the rapid pace of technological change and globalization is going to mean that jobs you think are safe now might not be safe in the future. So just having as many options as possible open to you is always going to be a good thing. So I'm going to end the talk with the flip side of why not to pursue a PhD. So here are 3 major downsides of going to grad school. The first one is uncertainty. So by nature, research is very uncertain. You don't know day to day how you're going to progress. You're going to have many days or even weeks at a time where you're working on something and you're going down a dead end that's just not working out, or you have to trash several months worth of work because you're going down a wrong path. So uncertainty is just really hard to grapple with day to day, and it's something that can be extremely demoralizing to grad students. On a related note, a lot of grad students suffer from isolation because by definition, you're one of the only people in the world who are working on pushing the state of the art in your specific, very specialized niche. And of course, your advisor and other fellow students might be able to help you at a high level, but they really don't know the details, the nitty-gritty of your particular project. And it's really up to you to figure that out. So it can be a very isolating experience for a lot of students. And lastly, you don't have as much money as your peers in your 20s. So I put poverty in quotes because you're not truly poor, right? You're not truly, like the majority of the people in the world who are actually living in real poverty. So the hope is if you're doing your PhD, it's by choice, and you're okay with living off of 15 to 25K a year. So if you don't like these traits that people run into in grad school, I think it's a good idea to go in industry right after graduating. So in industry, instead of uncertainty, you get a lot of short-term payoffs. By definition, a lot of industrial projects are structured with short-term milestones and payoffs in mind, and things are a lot more certain. You're progressing forward at a steady rate, and you feel satisfied making steady progress week by week, month by month. The opposite of isolation is structured teamwork. Industry is really good at figuring out how to put structure around projects, assigning teams, giving you senior mentors and senior engineers and project managers on your team to really guide you along. And lastly, you're just making a lot more money. You're making 3 to 5 times more money than you would be in grad school. So if you really want the money in your 20s to enjoy life with, then going to industry right away is obviously a good idea. So in sum, in this talk, I presented 3 practical reasons to pursue a PhD, and then also 3 practical reasons why you should probably not pursue a PhD.